Thank you so much for having me today. It's a real pleasure, and this session will allow me to offer a little bit maybe of poetry and philosophy as an intermezzo, as we are roughly halfway. I would like to explore a less traveled area of lifelong learning journeys, and it is the interior condition of the learner. I would like to share some experiences and reflection that I gain essentially from two perspectives, as lifelong learner and as meditator for 30 years. I know Joanne said this is for like kind of sassy. Bear with me another 14 minutes. I hope I'll convince you of the contrary. I hope I can articulate why my inner and intimate relation to space influence both my lifelong learning mindset and my choosing meditation as an operating system for making my life a pilot project. As a child, I grew up on a farm. It was almost a ritual that during the summer months, around 10 o'clock in the evening, we would go outside and watch the sky. Over the years, watching the sky was for me, and like for the adults around me, not so much second guessing the weather forecast so as to plan the work on the next day. For me, it became a habit to muse and travel into space. At that time, was very active in the domain of space industry. And when I was a child, space activity was very present in public information sphere. The few hours of TV on air pre-social media times were regularly broadcasting satellite launch from Kourou in French Guiana. Later on, at my French University of Dijon in Burgundy, I was blessed to be exposed to space law. And later on in Luxembourg, I even had the chance to, as practicing lawyer, to be in a team reviewing contracts to launch satellites into space. At the time, telecommunication were privatized in Europe. I admit a couple of black holes ago. Early on, I would say from the age of 8 or so, I developed the idea that if my dream of interplanetary travel may not be obvious in my lifetime, I still don't despair. There is a space which might be as complex and mysterious that I could travel to, my own inner universe. And I was really comforted when I realized decades later that physicists, astrophysicists like Max Tegmark from MIT or this year Nobel Prize in Physics Roger Penrose develop, in addition to their extraordinary contribution to physics, the exploration of neurosciences, consciousness, the heart problem, and the world within us. I recently saw pictures showing similarities between the human brain and the cosmic web. So the idea of traveling within until we can commonly travel out there appears to have quite some merit and an excellent preparation in anticipation of all the opportunities that space opens to humanity. Let me tell you that it is not out of lack of visionary or futuristic idea that I will consciously not drill today into learning technologies using biofeedback, simulation, virtuality, brain chip, all the way to CRISPR-Cas9 genetic scissors to alter the way we learn by modifying our IQ or other aspects involved in learning in our genetic code. No, it is not all because of a lack of wild imagination. I cannot demonstrate that today, but trust me. I think what I imagine is much bolder and much harder. I have the dream that our species could shift from being suboptimal robots, as we may be at times, if not too often today, to being fully born to our human potential and confident being ever more augmented by technology. If one narrative to pitch the benefits of exponential technology advancements is that it is for the good of humanity, we need to make sure that the new unity in the making, that some call transhumanism, gets the best of both worlds when united. This surely raises many ethical questions, and as a lawyer, I'm very sensitive to it. Here again, I do not see the answer into regulating technological development, even if it is part of the conversation. I see much more the need to strengthen the confidence of fellow human beings in themselves, so together we can embrace augmentation while wholeheartedly exploring and honing our human potential. So let us venture into a mini thought experiment. By the way, a great concept to explore in all sorts of sciences, social and natural. Let's see how mindfulness-based space education could be a key to tackling the challenges we are facing here and now or out there. So the idea is to try and ponder for a moment on actually even imagining we are traveling there. Imagine you are dressed like a cosmonaut. I mean, we've been thinking a lot and having the thought out there, but try and bring the thought in you in the here and now. Imagine you are sitting in a cosmonaut suit. You're traveling for hours, when not yours, without moving to a hostile destination after having been trained for years with no guarantee to ever fly, with the clear expectation to perform complex and delicate missions in a very confined environment for months, cut from your beloved, exposed to microgravity, and without a guarantee to return. What sort of extraordinary capabilities such astronaut needs to grow and cultivate over years of dedication for preparing themselves to an interplanetary exploration. Taking this year as a reference point, and you will understand I refer to COVID. Many of us are already getting signs of dysfunction caused by the lockdown. Lockdown is highly constraining and definitely nothing to be praised. But in comparison to being victim of climate catastrophes or space travel, not to evoke Mars colonization, lockdown may appear as a rather relaxing experience. What sort of mindset, shall we ask ourselves, physical and emotional conditions do we need to have nurtured over years, or would we need to cultivate to have the determination to successfully deliver on most wicked and life-challenging endeavors of our time on Earth or in space? To take the responsibility to go from dreaming to designing to making it happen as space entrepreneur requires incredible resolve and determination, stamina and endurance. Let us slow down. I said earlier that we are oftentimes walking software, these smileys with little feet directly under our faces, cut from the wonderful meters that can give us feedback in our bodies on how well or not we are doing right here, right now. I'm referring to our heartbeats, our sweaty hands if we are stressed, or anything that touches indicators like dry mouth as I'm speaking to you because I'm nervous to perform. Sir Ken Robinson explained in his legendary TED Talk about education that since the 19th century, education has essentially focused on the brain and left our bodies out of the learning equation. And it brings many questions for reforming education and making education relevant for the challenges of our times. Questions that are really intriguing is, how do we learn? Where do we store the knowledge and know-how that we acquire? How do we mobilize this knowledge and know-how? Is only our organ called brain involved? Or what is the place of the body in this conversation? I can only speak of the European countries I lived in and where I studied. And funny enough, every minister appointed to lead the Ministry of Education, Superior Studies or Research, apart from the fact that generally they do not stay very long in their job, often initiate reforms that are rather focusing on what to study on isolated discipline and rarely on the learning operating system of the learner. Can state-driven educational institutions prepare adequately future generation? Will education happen more and more outside established institutions? And how will entrepreneurship be factored in? To have a starting point to shape shift education and make it relevant to help current and future generation to be empowered to tap their potential and address the long list of challenges that have accumulated generation after generation, one could consider using the capabilities one develops when one practices mindfulness. I hold this quality as extremely relevant for any project relating to space exploration. That's, of course, the further ambitious project. And of course, who can the more, can the less. So it's very interesting to take that as the teaser of reflecting about that. So in a nutshell, mindfulness helps with cultivating attention. Mindfulness requires from the practitioner to be clear about his or her intention and able to sustain the intention without guarantee of outcome. Patience is a key hallmark of mindfulness, as requires to stick long enough with the practice to harvest its benefit. Many of these qualities, and the next one, really match well space exploration. A beautiful quality fostered by mindfulness is the beginner's mind. We heard the word curiosity many times. This is not something that is falling on on you as a baby. It is something that you can cultivate, grow, and expand. So mindfulness is not wellness. Mindfulness is the ability to pay attention moment after moment, not judgmentally, without rejecting what is unpleasant or clinging on what feels good. It also creates the condition to connect to what is beyond the self by practicing the narrowing or broadening of what is on our attention radar. I could carry on, but let me take one perspective on mindfulness-based space education that could help us move from an ego-centric worldview to an from ecology-centric worldview. Have you ever wondered, when you see the Earth from the space, what it must be like to take such a distance and see the Earth from outside and realize its place in the cosmos? I find that meditating on this perspective regularly, and I mean really regularly, brings an incredible distance and an incredible enriches and broaden the inner space in which we can really be home, avoiding being caught up in all sorts of life self-inflicted misery. This elevates our gaze and allows us to move away from a view placing human beings on Earth at the top of an earth-bound natural ecosystem and to move beyond the Anthropocene paradigm, possibly pay more respect to the blue planet. Viewing the Earth in its bigger context helps relate to the concept of Gaia much more profoundly, and therefore may allow new insights how to find creative solutions to our many pressing challenges. So to sum up, a mindfulness-based space education shift would promote pluridisciplinarity, so mind and body are part of the educational equation. It would be experiential to ground knowledge in action. It would be collaborative, so we develop a sense of collective purpose and community. Hybrid, individual and collective, theoretical and applied. And with this approach, we can nurture an abundance mindset, directly activating our empathy and creativity. We learn to be in touch with the creative part in us, ready to focus and deploy ingenuity to conquer our full potential with empathy and intention. We unite our body and our mind, and all of a sudden, biological intelligence and artificial intelligence have so much to profit from each other. Human can learn to be bored to their humanity, while technology can be enriched with ethics, morale, biofeedback to be able to use the power of inhibition for the good of humanity. So I hope mindfulness-based space education is not just an hot hair term coined today for you, but can unfold all the multiple meaning this expression entails, literally and figuratively. On all levels of consciousness, we are able to access in our current state of underdevelopment. How to honor our roots and not to cut our wings. My provisional answer, in response, echoing Kai Fuli's great book on AI superpower, is to make sure to keep love in the equation. I thank you for your attention.